Nanako and I had been working on kind of infrastructurally based projects years before. It actually began with a collaborative project with Stan Allen, first to document the water supply of New York City. So it began more or less as a mapping of infrastructure, just because the water supply was never drawn completely. It was all done, the documentation was by contract, tunneling company. So there were small segments, but no one had ever really assembled all of the drawings from the reservoirs down to the city. So it started as that, as a kind of mapping project. With a Graham Foundation grant. And it was a learning experience for us because we could, of course, easily, it just took a long time, but we could easily compile all the drawings, make the maps, coherent representation of the system. But then there was an ambition also to make proposals for the system. And there we ran into some real difficulties. And we were relying on, the kind of prevailing ideology at that point was very language-based. So there was a kind of, totally failed attempt to try to derive specific meanings out of sight by place names. And we were trying to kind of even research the origins of the names, and then there was a real kind of blockage when it came to making a proposition in architectural form. And so the first full-blown kind of infrastructure design that we did, which was a breakthrough, was this design over there, which was supposed to be just sort of an exercise, a kind of warm-up. It was the competition in Venice for the Piazzale Roma, which is the last place where the big parking garage is and where the last place you can bring a car before you kind of shift modalities to walking or boat, what have you. So, and it was a breakthrough because it didn't have to be self-generated from language. There was a deadline, there was some real kind of requirements. All of those things actually help us to kind of work through a project and do a design. So we never really ever did a successful proposal for the water supply, but I think just the breakthrough in doing something else and kind of taking a competition on, where you didn't manufacture your own program and your own site and your own language, was enormously helpful. Yeah. So that led, in a way, to our East Side project, which was it was the first Van Allen Fellowship, and also very interesting in terms of the context of city planning at the time. The Van Allen, was comprised of practitioners from planning, from architecture, from landscape, from the fine arts, who all acted in a way as advisory members to the group that was doing the fellowship. And their kind of initial inclination at that time was to be extremely site-specific. And they saw, I guess, our Yokohama Port Terminal competition, and so they thought that we should do something like that, a finger pier in the East River. And then, of course, we were, interested in infrastructure, inspired by the work at OMA. So no, we're not going to do like one finger pier. We want to do the whole East River edge. 12 miles of it. We'll design the whole 12 miles. We'll kind of create this, continuous line for the public, but also weave it with infrastructure and programming and landscape. So, we spent, I think, nearly a year designing that project and doing a big 30-foot model of the east side, shown to Van Allen. And that proposal led to our getting into the west side, which is the question you asked. So we basically applied the principles we kind of learned from doing the east side to that site on the west side. It's like there was, assuming that the city was in fact a mega structure by default. It was never designed that way, but in effect it was, and that we could work with multiple grounds and work through the section of the city down to the lowest tracks and station and all the way up. So yeah, it was, we were able then to kind of focus our energies on that one site. In retrospect, I think it's true, the project that we're building in Kaohsiung directly comes out of those ideas. Design, for us, I think design really comes from other design. And that, it also relates to, the projects, and then I would say sustained projects of other architects. The thing that I guess the market and commercial society prevents many architects from crediting their contemporaries, which is kind of tragic, because that's one of the things I'm very optimistic about, as opposed, say, to the art world. There still is, I believe, and I may be overly hopeful, but I think there still is some coherence in architecture within the discipline itself, and that it isn't just a bunch of separated efforts that get marketed, but there are sustained projects across the discipline that architects tap into, and then they go on, take their own paths with them and so forth. But it isn't just a series of one-offs, or I look at this site and I get an idea and I do this and then I do something else. It's part of a sustained evolution of work that's both within your practice but also in the world, and
Yeah, and I believe how both of them influence each other.
It's crucial to us. I've become a conservative in that respect. In the sense that, I see that the conditions today related to all of the kind of ideology also would tend to attack structures that I think are actually very important and good. So, we're in danger of losing that form of continuity too. So, I just mean conserving the, things that are valuable, as well as, however radical the new proposition is fine with me too. But
not at the cost, I guess,
of, completely chopping oneself off, roots. It's somewhat paradoxical, but at some level, there are, I would say, limits to the practice that are beneficial. And at the same time, when one makes a proposition in the world, there's also a productive interaction with the environment and the world. But so I would see it as, architecture at some level being autonomous or semi-autonomous, but at the same time, a successful piece of architecture does interact with its immediate site and with the social conditions. It almost has to. Of course, it could also be a bad interaction, but that's, I guess, depending upon the value of the architecture. So it's at once, there's a semi-autonomous trajectory to projects that they don't emerge full-blown out of a site analysis, bringing a whole package of ideas and models to a place, and that's where the productive interaction can occur. It's not through exhaustive analysis without a project. That's I guess that would be my position.